Agenda for the day. So what we're going to start with is actually an introduction to both Flask as well as HTML. So if you haven't played around with Flask, not exactly sure why we chose Flask, what this is all about, we're going to get into that in Module 1. And then we'll also discuss a little bit of HTML. I am going to say right away, though, that if you're trying to use this to learn HTML, this is really not the best spot, but we'll talk about some resources where you can go get that.
Right, because Flask is what's going to allow one of the ways you can take Python onto the web.
Exactly.
So that's where the connection between the Python and Flask comes in.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's actually other alternatives that you could use as well. There's Bottle, there's Django. We went with Flask. We'll actually talk about why we went with Flask in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then from there, we'll go ahead and actually take a look at getting in and creating web pages. And that's going to be our terminology warning section, because that's really where we're going to get into how those requests are going to be mapped and how we're going to control what code is going to get executed behind the scenes. And then all of that is really kind of the appetizer to the main event, the first of two main events, which is going to be Module 3, where we'll actually build the structure of our little trivia app that we're going to be using for our demos. And that's going to be the front end. So that's going to be the ability to ask the questions and answer them later on, add questions and answer them later on. But what we're going to see is we're going to want somewhere to actually store those, and that will roll us right on into Modules 4 and 5 being the second main event.
Right, where I'm going to go into the back end of things, because one of the things we're going to see as we get into the websites is the fact that when you're building web applications, you have to think about what is the user seeing and how do we communicate with the user, as well as when they give us information, how do we store that information and how do we retrieve information on a server side. So I'm going to be talking about the Redis aspect and different ways that you can store data so that you can remember what's happening between calls.
Absolutely. And then finally, last but not least, we'll have done all this work here locally. Wouldn't it be nice to share this with all of our wonderful viewers and our friends?
Well, exactly, because by default, if I sit here on my computer building a website and I'm running my website and testing my website, it's only available on my machine.
You know, I noticed a common phrase throughout all of it. You kept saying website, website, website. I'm thinking we should probably get that onto the, wait, it'll come to me. We should get that onto the web.
Aha, yes.
Hey.
So exactly. So so of course we're going to finish off with saying, hey, now that we've built something cool, how do we share that and put it out there onto the great world of the internet, onto the web, so others can see it?
Absolutely. And that's where we'll close everything off, is actually taking that, putting that out there, and you'll actually be able to see all of our work. And if you've been following along at home, you'll even actually be able to get in and deploy that out as well. Fantastic. Now that we've talked a little bit about us and what we're going to talk about, let's talk about you. And let's kind of set where it is that we're aiming this. And what we're looking for is really, new Python developers that are looking to take that next step. So if you checked out our Introduction to Programming with Python, which is a 2-day event, lots of great content, and you may even get a toaster.
That's right.
Yeah, you'll have to check that out to find that out. But if you followed along with that, this is really designed to be the next step from there. And then also burgeoning web developers. So if you're just kind of trying to check things out. But I would also mention that if you've done web forms, if you've done MVC, and you're really just trying to see how things are in other environments.
Yeah, because you do hear a lot about Python these days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe you've been developing in .NET for web and you're curious to just explore Python web development.
Yep.
This will be a reasonable course to take you down that path as well. You may be familiar with some of the concepts, because as we mentioned earlier, concepts tend to be the same from language to language, but we will show you things like the routing and so on for Flask and Python and that sort of architecture.
Absolutely. And I would say, kind of going back to a point that you had made earlier about, programming languages having a lot of similar concepts, is that if you've already done C# or VB, a lot of what we're going to be seeing in Python is going to be relatively similar to what you've seen before, and so you'd probably be able to still follow along just fine, even if you haven't necessarily done Python. So if you've done another programming language, you can definitely check that out.
All right.
Or check this out. Last little thing is, of course, you can go off and get your 50 points. I still, I say this every single time. I do need to update that because it's actually now 2.5 million registered users.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's your little voucher code. And I would also mention that it's on the FAQ page as well, which is where you're also going to find our slides. Now, before we launch into Module 1, I do need to mention one last thing. And this is actually brand new. This is the first live MVA Jumpstart that's going to have closed captioning. Right now it's closed captioning for English, but we do have closed captioning that you should notice on the video stream, and I'm not sure which side of the stream
I'm seeing comments about the closed caption, so it must be coming up.
There's a button like right about there somewhere. I think it's either on this side or it's on that side. I don't know which side of the stream I actually end up on.
We don't see the closed caption.
Yeah, we don't see us. But in any event, you will notice there's a little spot right down there that will say captions, and then you can turn that on or turn that off and actually see live closed captioning, which again, this is the first MVA Jumpstart doing that, which I think is
cool.
Is pretty slick.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. What do you say we talk about Flask?
Yeah, I think that's enough intro.